The phone rang once, then twice. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I wasn't supposed to pick up, but curiosity gets the better of anyone, doesn't it? I heard her voice. That voice. "Are you alone?" she asked, her words carrying an icy edge, like a whisper in the back of your mind that refuses to leave. I froze. For a moment, everything felt distant, unreal. I should have hung up, but I didn't. "What do you want?" I stammered, my voice barely audible. The woman on the other end let out a soft laugh, one that chilled my spine. "It's not about what I want. It's about what you need to know." I felt my heart race as the weight of her words sank in. "What do you mean?" I barely managed to speak. Her answer was brief. "You're in danger. They know about you." And before I could ask another question, the line went dead. Silence swallowed the room. The silence was suffocating. The phone call had left an gnawing feeling in my gut, one I couldn't shake. Every inch of the house felt like it was watching me, waiting. I had to get out of there, away from that damned room. But as I grabbed my jacket, a voice inside whispered that it wasn't over. I didn't know how, but I felt eyes on me. The air seemed thicker, as if it were pressing in from all directions. With a deep breath, I turned toward the door, my heart thudding in my chest. Was I being paranoid? Or was something watching me? I needed answers. The question gnawed at me. Who had called? What did they know? My hand lingered on the doorknob, and just as I turned it, I heard something from the hallway. It was faint. A soft whisper. I froze, listening. "You shouldn't have answered," it hissed. My blood ran cold. I pulled the door open with a jolt, stepping out into the hall. The sound of my breath filled the silence, but there was something else. Something else that shouldn't have been there. The floor creaked beneath my feet as I stepped forward, every movement seeming louder than before. The hallway was bathed in dim light, but it felt like it stretched on forever. There was no way out, not yet. As I moved forward, the walls seemed to close in. Then, from the end of the hall, I saw it, faint, like a flicker of a shadow. My heart raced as I squinted to see better. Was it someone? "Who's there?" I called out, my voice wavering. The figure didn't respond. It just stood there, unmoving. I couldn't breathe. The figure remained motionless, but the air around me thickened as though it had gained weight. Each step felt like I was wading through water. The room behind me seemed miles away. "Answer me," I shouted, panic rising in my chest. My voice echoed down the hallway, but the figure didn't move. Instead, the space between us seemed to expand, like the air itself was pushing us apart. And then, just like that, it was gone. No sound, no movement. Just the void of silence, left in its wake. I stood frozen, staring at the empty hallway, unable to comprehend what had just happened. Had it been a trick of the light? A hallucination? Or something much worse? I took one tentative step back, then another. My breath was shallow, heart pounding. I needed to get out of this house, away from whatever that was. The door was still open, but I didn't want to look behind me. Every instinct screamed to run, to get as far away as possible. But I couldn't leave. Not yet. There was something I had to do. Maybe if I didn't face whatever it was head on, I'd never be free of it. I turned back toward the door, my pulse pounding in my ears. It felt like every part of me was screaming to stay away from it, but my feet were already moving. I closed my eyes for a second, gathering the courage to face what lay behind that door. There was no turning back now. The days after the call felt like a blur. My life had fractured in a way I couldn't begin to understand. I found myself looking over my shoulder, expecting to see shadows lurking. Every sound, every whisper felt amplified. I couldn't escape the feeling that something was always just out of view. And yet, I had to keep moving. Work was a hollow distraction, my colleagues' faces blending together like ghosts. No one knew. No one could ever know. I had been living in the shadow of a lie for so long that it was hard to separate who I really was from who I had allowed everyone to believe I was. But that voice, those words, it cut through it all. They know about you. I couldn't stop thinking about it. It wasn't just a call, it was a warning. And if that warning was true, there was no place safe anymore. I tried to push it all away. My thoughts swirled in constant motion, but I couldn't ignore the sensation that something was coming closer. When I finally made it home, I slammed the door behind me, locking it with a force that surprised me. Everything felt wrong, from the creak of the floorboards to the way the shadows in the corner of the room seemed to shift. I paced, unsure of what to do with the nervous energy boiling up inside me. My mind kept returning to the unanswered questions. Who called? Why? The mystery gnawed at me. But just as I was about to sit down, the phone rang again. I hesitated. Should I pick it up? I couldn't, not again. The sound of the ringing filled the room, suffocating the air. It rang a second time, and then a third. I took a breath and reached for it. I picked up the phone, my hand trembling. Hello? I said, my voice small, as if speaking too loudly would shatter the fragile silence. This time, there was no voice on the other end. Only static. My pulse quickened. The connection was terrible, but I could have sworn I heard a faint breath. My own breath caught in my throat, and for a moment, I thought I might be imagining it. But then, in the background, barely audible over the static, came a whisper, cold, deliberate, and haunting. You can't escape. I slammed the phone down so hard it rattled the receiver, but the words hung in the air. I stood there, breathless, staring at the phone, feeling its weight in the silence. I needed to leave, to go somewhere. Anywhere. But that voice, those words, kept me rooted in place, paralyzed. The next day, I found myself walking aimlessly through the streets. It was as though the world outside had become foreign to me, distant and unwelcoming. Every face I passed seemed to be watching me, every stranger's glance felt like a judgment. I couldn't escape the feeling that I was being hunted. I needed answers, but I had no one to turn to. I couldn't risk bringing anyone into this madness. As I walked, the faint sound of footsteps behind me made my skin crawl. The rhythm of them was too familiar, too deliberate. It was as if someone was matching my every step. I turned quickly, heart pounding in my chest, but there was no one there. The street was empty. I looked around, and the feeling of being followed lingered, hanging in the air like a heavy fog. The sound of my own breath was the only thing I could hear now. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was always just behind me, waiting for the right moment to strike. I stayed close to my apartment for days, afraid to step outside, afraid to answer the phone, afraid of every creak of the floorboards beneath me. But eventually, I knew I had to act. I had to face whatever was coming for me. As night fell, and I sat in the silence of my apartment, I decided to try something. I would call them. I would get to the bottom of it. I sat in front of the phone for what felt like hours, the weight of the decision crushing me. My fingers hovered over the numbers. What would I ask? Who would I even be calling? But the resolve inside me hardened. I dialed. The phone rang once. Then, twice. My heart pounded. This time, I was determined to get an answer. I had to. The days blurred together in a haze of constant tension. I couldn't focus. I couldn't think straight. I felt the walls closing in around me, as though something was waiting just beyond my sight, ready to pounce. I had no answers, only questions that grew sharper with each passing hour. Who was watching me? And why? I began to trust no one. Everyone felt like a potential threat. The barista at my local coffee shop. The mailman delivering a letter. They all seemed to be hiding something, their eyes darting away the moment they saw me looking. But then, on a Thursday afternoon, I received another call. This time, it wasn't static. This time, I knew it was real. I told you they know about you. A voice whispered, low and urgent. My blood ran cold. You're not safe. Then the line went dead, just like before. I slammed the phone down in frustration, my hands shaking. I had to act, but where could I go? Who could I trust? Everyone seemed to have their own secrets, their own hidden agendas. I began to notice little things. Strange marks on my doorframe. Items in my apartment out of place, just slightly, enough to make me question my own sanity. But it wasn't just that. It was the way people spoke to me. Their words so carefully chosen, as though they knew something I didn't. And then, one night, I saw him. A man standing across the street, staring at my window. He was tall, with dark hair and a heavy coat, even though the night was warm. He didn't move, just stood there watching me. I held my breath, wondering if he had seen me too. I ducked behind the curtains, hoping he hadn't noticed. The seconds felt like hours. But when I peeked again, he was gone. Vanished into the night. The next morning, I woke with a sense of dread that had settled deep in my chest. Something wasn't right. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, followed. The city felt like it was closing in on me. I couldn't walk down the street without glancing over my shoulder. Every footstep behind me sounded too deliberate. It wasn't just paranoia anymore. It was real. I was being hunted. But who was behind it? Who were these people? As the days dragged on, I found myself crossing paths with people I knew only vaguely. A coworker, a neighbor, even a friend I hadn't seen in years. Each of them seemed strangely distant, like they were watching me from a place I couldn't reach. They were all pieces of a puzzle I couldn't solve. One day I ran into Mark, an old friend from college. He seemed too calm, too collected. "You okay?" he asked, his gaze lingering too long. I nodded, but inside, I could feel something shifting. He knew more than he let on. I couldn't avoid Mark any longer. I had to confront him. The next time I saw him, I pulled him aside. "What's going on?" I demanded. He looked at me, his expression unreadable. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice too calm, too measured. "Don't lie to me," I said, my voice rising. "I know you're involved in this. I know you're hiding something." For a moment, he didn't say anything. He just stood there, studying me with a gaze that seemed too intense. Finally, he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "You don't know who you're dealing with." His words hit me like a blow. My heart skipped a beat. What was he talking about? "What do you mean?" I whispered, my voice shaking. But before he could respond, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. My mind raced. What did he know? What had he just hinted at? I spent the next few hours replaying Mark's words in my head. "You don't know who you're dealing with." What did he mean by that? I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something crucial, some piece of the puzzle that was right in front of me. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that Mark wasn't just an innocent bystander in this. He had to be involved. But how? I tried to call him, but the line was dead. I sent him a message, but there was no reply. It was like he had vanished. That's when I saw it. On my phone. A new message, a simple text from an unknown number. "It's not just Mark. It's everyone." The words hit me like a tidal wave. My hands shook as I read them over and over, trying to make sense of it. Who could it be? And what did it mean? I spent the night obsessing over the message. It's not just Mark. It's everyone. The words echoed in my head, like a constant drumbeat that I couldn't shake. Who was behind this? Who were they? I thought I knew everyone in my life, every face, every voice. But now I wasn't sure. What if they'd all been hiding something? What if they weren't who they said they were? The more I thought about it, the more the pieces started to fit together, like an intricate puzzle that had been staring me in the face all along. My phone buzzed again, a new message. This one was different. It didn't come from an unknown number. It came from Mark. "Meet me," it said. Just those two words. It was a risk, but at this point, what did I have to lose? I grabbed my jacket, my pulse racing with anticipation and fear. Whatever was happening, it was about to come to a head. I arrived at the address Mark had sent me. It was an old, abandoned building on the outskirts of town. The windows were boarded up, and the air was thick with dust. My heart pounded as I walked through the dilapidated hallways, the creaking floorboards beneath my feet sounding far too loud in the eerie silence. I called out, but there was no answer. Mark's message was clear: meet me. But where was he? As I turned the corner, I spotted something strange, a door, slightly ajar. I approached it cautiously, pushing it open slowly. The faint sound of whispers drifted from the other side. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I couldn't see anyone, but the voices were getting louder, closer. I stepped inside, and there in the dim light I saw Mark. But it wasn't him. Not anymore. The man standing before me had his face, but there was something cold and hollow about his eyes. It wasn't Mark. I stumbled backward, my heart racing. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice shaking with both fear and confusion. The figure didn't respond, but it stepped closer, its movements slow, deliberate. The more I stared at him, the more wrong it felt. I knew this face, knew those eyes. It was Mark, but it wasn't. It was like his body was here, but his soul had been replaced with something else. The air in the room grew colder, the silence pressing in on me from all sides. "Tell me the truth," I begged, my voice cracking. The figure finally spoke, but it wasn't Mark's voice that came out. It was distorted, hollow, and dark. "The truth is, you've been living a lie." The words hit me like a sledgehammer. I recoiled in shock, but the figure took another step forward, its hand reaching out as though it knew something I didn't, something I wasn't supposed to know. The words echoed in my mind: "You've been living a lie." I backed away from the figure, trying to make sense of what was happening. Was this some twisted game? A sick joke? "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why?" The figure laughed, a low, guttural sound that didn't belong to Mark. "You really don't know, do you?" it said, its voice filled with mockery. "You thought you were just some innocent pawn, but you were always part of this." My mind raced. Was I being targeted by some kind of conspiracy? Or worse, had I been part of it all along? The figure stepped closer, its hand now inches from my face. "The truth is, your entire life has been manipulated. The calls, the lies, the people around you, they've all been orchestrated." My chest tightened. Could it be true? Could my whole existence have been a fabrication? I couldn't breathe. The weight of the revelation pressed down on me like a vice. Everything I had known, everything I had believed in, was suddenly unraveling. My life, my very identity, had been a lie. The figure's words echoed in my mind: "You've been living a lie." I tried to step back, to run, but my legs wouldn't move. It was like I was paralyzed, trapped in a nightmare I couldn't escape. "What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice trembling. The figure smiled, but there was no warmth in it, only coldness. "What we want is for you to understand the truth," it said. "And when you do, you'll know why you're here, why you were chosen." A chill ran through me. Chosen? My heart raced. My thoughts were a blur. I wanted to scream, to run, but all I could do was stand there, frozen in place. The truth was out there, but it was a truth I wasn't ready to face. I couldn't think. My mind was racing, drowning in a sea of confusion and fear. The figure in front of me, the truth it had revealed, it all felt too much. I had spent my life as a spectator, thinking I was living a normal life, but now the pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, and I couldn't escape the chilling reality. "You were always part of this." The words rang in my ears. I had been manipulated. My life had been set in motion by forces I couldn't even comprehend. I could feel the walls closing in, my chest tightening with every passing second. It was all unraveling. Mark, the calls, the whispers, it had all been leading to this moment. "What do you want from me?" I shouted again, desperation lacing my voice. But the figure's expression never changed. "What we want," it said calmly, "is for you to understand, to accept your role." My head was spinning. My role? What role? I couldn't breathe. I had to get out of there, but I couldn't move. I was trapped. In that moment, I felt a surge of adrenaline. The figure stepped closer, its cold smile never faltering, its eyes empty. I had to move. I had to fight back. My heart pounded as I stumbled backward, reaching for anything that could give me a chance to escape. The room felt smaller, suffocating, as if it were alive, pushing in on me. I could see no way out. "You can't escape," the figure whispered, and for a moment, I thought I might collapse. But then, without thinking, I lunged at the figure, desperation fueling my every move. I hit the floor hard, the breath knocked out of me, but I scrambled to my feet, my hands trembling. The figure didn't move. It stood there, watching me. "You should have stayed where you were," it said, its voice cold and detached. "Now, you're part of it, whether you like it or not." My mind screamed, but the truth was inescapable. I was already part of this dark game, whether I wanted to be or not. I could feel my body shaking, exhaustion and fear creeping in. My chest heaved as I gasped for air, the weight of what was happening crashing over me like a tidal wave. I couldn't fight anymore. This had to end. I had to end it. "Why?" I whispered. "Why me? Why are you doing this to me?" The figure tilted its head slightly, as if pondering my question. Then it spoke, its voice cold, almost pitiless. "Because you're the key, you always were." My stomach churned. "The key to what?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. The figure's lips parted slightly, and for a moment I thought it might say something new, something that would change everything. But it didn't. It only smiled. "The end, or the beginning," it said cryptically. My heart skipped. The answer didn't matter anymore. I knew what I had to do. "This ends now," I said, my voice filled with resolve, my hands shaking but steadying as I took my first step toward the truth. I walked toward the figure, my heart pounding with every step. Each moment felt like an eternity, the air thick with fear and uncertainty. "You think this is over?" the figure asked, its voice tinged with mockery. I didn't answer. My gaze never left its face. This was the moment of truth. I had come too far to back down now. The figure's smile twisted into something darker, something that didn't belong in this world. I reached out, my hand trembling, but I wasn't going to let fear control me any longer. I wasn't going to let it define me. The figure raised its hand as if it was going to stop me, but I didn't hesitate. I slammed my hand into the figure's chest, my fingers pushing through, breaking the illusion. It screamed, no, it howled, and the world around me seemed to collapse. The room dissolved into darkness, and for a moment I thought I had failed. But then I saw it. A faint light ahead, like a glimmer of hope. The light grew stronger, and the figure began to melt away, its form twisting and disintegrating like smoke in the wind. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I was free, or so I thought. As the figure disappeared, the darkness around me seemed to recede, revealing a room filled with mirrors. Each mirror reflected a different version of me. Some were distorted, others shattered. I saw myself as I had been, as I was now, and as I could have been. "This is who you really are," a voice whispered from the shadows. It was mine, but it wasn't. I stepped closer to the mirrors, my heart still pounding. Could this be the truth? Or was it another trick? The reflections were silent, but they spoke louder than any words ever could. The truth was in the glass, and as I gazed at my own face, I knew one thing for sure. I was never going to be the same again. The mirrors continued to reflect my broken, fractured self, each one showing a piece of the puzzle I could no longer ignore. I wasn't sure when the room had started to feel different, but it had. The air was thicker now, as if the darkness had come alive and was pressing in on me, filling every inch of the space. My hands were still shaking, my breath unsteady. The person in the mirrors was me, yet not. I couldn't explain it. The truth was staring back at me, but I couldn't fully comprehend it. A voice echoed in the silence, my own voice, yet somehow not mine. "This is who you were always meant to be," it whispered. A sudden burst of understanding hit me like a wave. I wasn't just a pawn. I was the key. I was the one they'd been waiting for, the one who had been unknowingly manipulated all along. The power was mine to reclaim, but first, I had to face the person in the reflection. I had to stop running. I had to take control. The room had become a battleground of thoughts and emotions, my mind racing in a whirlwind of confusion. I could still hear that whispering voice, my own voice, lingering in the back of my mind, calling me to confront what I had avoided for so long. I couldn't escape anymore. The mirrors, the reflections, they weren't just a trick. They were the truth, a truth I had been hiding from for years. I had been complicit in this darkness, unwilling to see the role I played in the chaos. But now, standing in the middle of it all, I knew that I had to accept it. I had to embrace it, even if it meant losing everything I had once known. The truth was there, clear as day, and there was no more denying it. I was no longer a victim. I was the cause. And now the question was, what was I going to do about it? The silence was deafening. I couldn't stay in this room anymore. It felt suffocating, as though the mirrors were closing in on me, their reflections mocking my every move. I turned away from the mirrors, but the voice continued to echo in my head. I could no longer ignore the consequences of my actions. Every decision I made had led me here, to this moment, where I was forced to confront the darkness I had helped create. There was no escape from the responsibility that weighed heavily on my shoulders. I had to make a choice. I could either embrace the darkness fully, accept the role I had been given, or I could fight back, break the cycle, and finally set things right. The mirrors no longer held power over me. It was time to take action. My hands were steady now. My resolve had hardened. The truth had finally set me free. And now, it was time to fix what I had broken. I walked out of the room, the weight of the mirrors no longer pressing down on me. Each step I took felt like a step away from the past, from the person I had been. The hall outside was empty, silent, but it no longer felt oppressive. For the first time in what felt like forever, I breathed deeply, feeling the air fill my lungs, clear and untainted. I wasn't sure where I was going, but I knew I was moving forward. The memories of the calls, the whispers, the lies, they were all behind me now. I was leaving them behind, along with the version of me that had been manipulated into their web. It was time to rebuild, to take control of my own fate. I was no longer a pawn in someone else's game. I was in charge now, and I would never let anyone take that power from me again. I had faced the truth. And now, it was time for me to own it. The world outside was different. It was quieter somehow, as if the chaos had finally subsided. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, I felt a sense of peace settling over me. The fight was over. I had won, not by defeating anyone else, but by confronting myself, by accepting what I had done, and finding the strength to move forward. The journey had been long and painful, but it had shaped me into someone I could finally face. And though I had lost so much along the way, I had gained something far more valuable. I had gained control. I had gained myself. The future was uncertain, but for the first time I wasn't afraid. I knew I could face whatever came next, because I had already survived the darkest part of my life. And now I could finally live. The world had become a quieter place, or perhaps it was I who had changed. Everything I had known was now distant, like the fading echoes of a nightmare. The weight of my past still lingered, a shadow I could never fully escape. But for the first time in years, I could breathe. There was a calmness that washed over me, a peace I had never known, but it wasn't the absence of danger, it was the acceptance of it. I had learned that life would always have its battles, its twists and turns. But now, I could walk through it with my eyes open. There was no more hiding, no more running. As I stood there, watching the horizon, I realized that I wasn't who I used to be. I had changed, and whatever lay ahead, I would face it without fear, without hesitation. The road was long, but I was ready to walk it. My heart was steady. The past had no power over me anymore. The silence was no longer something to fear. It had become a companion, a reminder of how far I had come. But as I turned to leave, something caught my eye. A small familiar object lay on the ground, one I hadn't seen in years. My heart skipped a beat. It was a toy, something I had lost a long time ago, something that once belonged to me. It was small, insignificant even, but in that moment it felt like the world had come full circle. I bent down to pick it up, my fingers brushing the dust away, and for a brief second, I wondered if it was a sign. A message from the past, perhaps? But it didn't matter. The past was over. And as I stood up, I felt the weight of everything I had left behind slowly lift. I no longer needed the answers, no longer needed to search for meaning. The toy was a relic, but its significance was clear. I had survived. And now, I was free. I stood up, looking around one last time, as if searching for something that could bring me back to the chaos, to the madness that had ruled my life. But there was nothing. Only the wind, the trees, the silence. The world felt different somehow. Not in a way I could explain, but in a way that made me feel lighter. The burden had been lifted. It was as if the universe itself had exhaled, and in that moment, I understood. There was no more running. No more hiding. What had happened to me was irreversible, but it no longer held the same power. I wasn't defined by my past or by the lies that had surrounded me. I was defined by what I chose to do now. As I walked away from the spot where everything had begun, I knew that life was still ahead of me. And while I might never fully understand the twists of fate that brought me here, I was ready for whatever came next. The night was settling in, but I didn't feel afraid. I could hear the soft rustling of the wind in the trees, the world alive with quiet sounds. And then, just as the last light of day disappeared behind the horizon, I heard it. A whisper. It was faint, so faint that at first, I thought I imagined it. But then it came again, clearer this time. "You're not alone." The voice was low, familiar. I froze, the hairs on the back of my neck standing up. Was it a trick of my mind, a remnant of the past creeping back? Or was it real? I turned around, scanning the shadows, but there was nothing. No one. Just the wind and the darkening sky. Maybe it was a reminder of the people I had lost, of those I had let go. But it didn't matter. I had learned to stand on my own. I had faced the truth, and in doing so, I had become stronger than I ever thought possible. Whatever was coming, I was ready. A child's toy slowly rolled to a stop in the dirt, its soft plastic wheel grinding to a halt. The scene before me blurred for a moment. I took a deep breath. This was it. The moment I had been waiting for, the moment everything had been leading to. I stepped back, taking one last look at the toy before it vanished from sight, disappearing into the distance. The world felt still, suspended in time. My breath caught in my chest. And then, silence. Nothing but silence, wrapping around me like a blanket. For a moment, I felt the weight of everything that had passed, everything that had led me to this point. I closed my eyes, letting the silence fill me. And then, as I took a slow, deliberate breath, I knew that everything had changed. The past was gone. The future was unwritten. I was free. And then, just as the weight of my thoughts settled, I heard a breath. The final breath, before everything went dark.